couple of weeks ago, I posted this clip on this channel about tanks. I said that the Americans and the Germans are haggling, they're wrangling over the possibility of sending tanks to Ukraine. Mr. Zelensky wants tanks, lots of tanks. And I said that the Americans and the Germans are extremely wary of sending tanks to Ukraine because they don't want the plains of Ukraine to become a disaster for the tanks, a graveyard for American and German tanks. So I said most likely they will not send tanks. And then last week, the announcement was made that the Germans will send Leopard tanks and the Americans will send M1 Abrams tanks. And I got a whole deluge of comments saying, Abhijit, you are so wrong, your analysis is so wrong, and you are stupid. All that, good fun to watch. Now what's happening? What's happening? Was I totally, entirely wrong? Was my analysis deeply flawed? Have I been exposed by what's happening? Let's take a look at what's happening. Let's see. Let's put this on the screen. So yes, the Germans are sending tanks to Ukraine. Where is it? Yes. Let's look at the details. The devil is in the details. So which tank is Germany sending? Germany approves Leopard 1 battle tank exports to Ukraine. Not the Leopard 2, it's a Leopard 1. A package of 29 older tanks could be sent as soon as refurbishments are done. So these tanks are sitting in museums and they will be refurbished and sent to Ukraine. How many? 29, it says here. 29 tanks. Germany has approved the export of older Leopard 1 battle tanks, which would add to the raft of whatever fighting vehicles burden promised. These tanks were first produced in 1960. In the 1960s. It's a 1960s system. And they were all replaced within Germany's own military with Leopard 2 tanks in 2003. That's 2 decades ago. They were all retired. So the Leopard 1 tanks were retired 2 decades ago. They will be refurbished, brought back to life somewhat. And how many? 26 of them, 29 of them will be sent to Ukraine. What a large number that is. 29 tanks. They are being refurbished and so on. All that. After weeks of hesitation, it would make... Okay. So 29 Leopard 1 tanks and 14 Leopard 2A tanks. 14. I'm shocked by the generosity of the Germans. 14 tanks, new ones, and 29 old ones. Wow, wow, viva, like Borat would say. Yeah. So look at the numbers, my dear friends. Now look here. Yeah, once again, Germany authorizes manufacturers to send Leopard 1 tanks to Ukraine. Blah, blah, blah. 14 Leopard 2s and 29 Leopard 1s. Extremely old tanks. The Leopard 1 entered service in the 1960s. And so on. So once again, we're getting the same numbers, 29 Leopard 1s and 14 Leopard 2s. German Leopard tanks without explosive reactive armor should be easy prey for Kornet systems of Russia. That's, interesting. Kornet anti-tank weapon system. So how good are the Leopard 2s? This is an article that has been deleted. It's a Turkish article. Ilbab Hezimeti 15 tank way Zihirli Arach. I don't know what it says. I don't know the language. Let's look here. This is an article from the National Interest. It's an American publication. Germany's Leopard 2 tank in Syria was beaten badly in battle. La la la. How did that happen? Yeah. So the Turks have been invading Syrian territory and encroaching on Syrian territory, and they have been trying to wipe out the Kurdish people. And they are hand in glove with ISIS. Yes, the Turks. And the Turks operate some of these German Leopard 2 tanks because Turkey is part of NATO, Germany is part of NATO. Both are owned by the US, and so they've been able to acquire Leopard 2 tanks. And it was ISIS, if you read this article, ISIS was able to destroy many... See, Turkish intervention against ISIS. So they've fought with ISIS and they've fought against ISIS also. So prior to the Leopard's arrival, around a dozen Turkish Patton tanks were destroyed by ISIS and Kurdish missiles. The Turkish defense commentators expressed the hope that the tougher Leopard 2 would fare better. Blah, 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 blah. So this was shockingly... So the Leopard 2 2A4 retains an older boxy turret configurations which affords less protection from modern anti-tank missiles, especially to the generally more vulnerable rear and side armor, which is a bigger problem in counter-insurgency environment where an attack can come from any direction. This was shockingly illustrated in December 2016 when evidence emerged that numerous Leopard 22s had been destroyed in intense fighting over ISIS-held Al-Bab, a fight that the Turkish military leaders described as a trauma. ISIS apparently destroyed 10 of the supposedly invincible Leopard 2s, 5 by anti-tank missiles, 2 by mines or improvised explosive devices, 1 to rocket or mortar fire, and others whatever. So the Leopard 2 is not some invincible tank, even though it's the most advanced and newest tank that the Germans have, and apparently one of the best tanks in the world, on par with the Abrams, the American Abrams tank. But there you are. So the Leopard 2 is not invincible. Even ISIS was able to destroy a bunch of these Leopard 2 tanks. And the Germans are sending Leopard 1s, 29 Leopard 1s, and only 14 Leopard 2s. Now, the Abrams, M1 Abrams, the Americans are going to send a few M1 Abrams. The Americans are being extremely generous. They're sending 31 M1A2 Abrams tanks. But it could take months, even the better part of a year, for Ukraine to get those tanks, because the Americans have to make changes to those tanks. They have to remove the uranium from the tanks and then swap in tungsten. So even those 31 tanks will take maybe up to a year to reach the Ukrainians. Just 31 tanks. Germany is sending 29 plus 14 is how much? It's 43. And the Americans are sending 31. So 74 tanks in total are going to reach Ukraine. It's going to take months or maybe 1 year to get those 74 tanks. What do you do with 74 tanks against the might of the Russian army? I really wonder. Yeah. So this is going to take a whole lot of time. The swapping of the uranium for the tungsten, the depleted uranium. So yeah, that's where we are. So the serious report says Germany admits Leopard tanks to be sent to Ukraine will not be deployed for 3 to 4 months. And 14 tanks is less than 4% of the total number Germany has. This is tokenism, not support. So there was a big, there's a lot of criticism of the allies of the NATO nations for giving verbal support to Ukraine but not material support. So now they have been shamed into sending these little things, 14 tanks, 29 tanks, 31 tanks, which will make no difference whatsoever to the big picture. Yeah, this is tokenism, not support. After all the arm twisting, Germany is proposing to send 14 Leopard tanks to Ukraine. That is about as much use as a chocolate teapot. So that is the deal. So I leave it for you to decide and to judge whether my analysis was correct or whether I've been totally exposed by the fact that the NATO nations are now sending tanks. It's tokenism. It's token support. It's not real support. If they want to really support Ukraine, they need to send at least a few hundred tanks to Ukraine. That might make a difference. The Russians have thousands of tanks. These 74 tanks will be steamrolled by the Russian advance whenever it comes. The Russians are going to put hundreds of tanks into battle whenever they do that. So yeah, this tokenism is a joke. Ukraine is a buffer. Ukraine is a sacrifice. They wanted Russia to, they wanted to force Russia to fire the first shots, and they used Ukraine for that. And that allowed them to impose sanctions on Russia and portray Russia as the biggest bad guy in the world. But Ukraine is being sacrificed. Ukraine is being sacrificed. They're going to fight to the last Ukrainian and to the last inch of Ukrainian territory. And other European countries are sending a few more tanks, a dozen here, a dozen there, maybe 100 or so, mostly older models. It's going to make no real difference. So this is all tokenism. Ukraine is being sacrificed in real time in front of our eyes. So whenever the big Russian advance comes, which it will most likely at some point in time, these tanks will make no difference, and Ukraine is in deep trouble.